Hello again, and welcome to the 301st episode of California Dreaming. Before we get started, I have a few notes about the show. This is an independent, ad-free podcast, which means I depend on you, the listeners, to help keep the show going, and there are a number of ways that you can assist. You can leave a nice rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or whichever platforms you listen to your shows on. You can recommend us in true crime discussion groups and forums. You can follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok. And if you would like to help out just a little bit more with the production of this show, you can subscribe to Patreon. Starting at just $1 a month, you will have access to dozens of full-length episodes that you will not hear anywhere else, and every subscriber gets to listen, not just the $5 tiers or the $10 tiers. And if a subscription just is not your thing, and you would still like to support the production of this podcast, you can do so through PayPal using my email, californiapod@gmail.com. The links to everything can be found in the show notes below. Today, I would like to thank Christy M. in Thousand Oaks, California, Leonie W., Stevie T., Sashi B. in London, England, Kristen, Kara or Kara M., Key S., that's K-E-E, Lori O. in Cathedral City, California, Dean S., also in London, Lindsay G. in Granada Hills, California, Carly S., Diane C. in Pennsylvania, and Lindsay L. for either joining Patreon, raising their pledge, going annual, or donating through PayPal. Your support is what keeps the lights on, and of course, the doggy treat jar full. All right, let's get back to the case at hand and continue our discussion of Teresa Stone's interrogation tapes. In the last episode, number 300, we began to take a look at Teresa Stone's third interview that she had with investigators, which took place on April 20th and carried over into the 21st of 2010. This was only about 6 days after her second interview, and I'm fairly certain that the intention was to take Teresa into custody. I don't think that she had any idea that she would not be leaving the jail again. And also, I don't know if she ever made bond, but if she didn't, then Teresa would end up staying put for somewhere around 8 years. Now, because Teresa, about, I want to say, 8 months after the murder in November of 2010, she decided to come clean. I don't know if she was free or if she made bond or if she was in custody when she did that. But when we get into this third interrogation right off the bat, Rose Warren, he lets her know, and he's honest with her. Well, he's honest with her most of the time, sort of. And he lets Teresa know that things are not looking good. They've done their homework. So he's going to spend his time working very hard at getting Teresa to fess up to the information that they know to be fact through the work they've been putting in. But she will continue to lie until she's backed into a corner and forced into revealing some of the truth. Teresa Stone will never be fully honest or cooperative with investigators, at least not until, like I said, around November of 2010. At that point, she allegedly had some kind of come to God moment and decided to come clean. And in saying that she had her come to God moment doesn't mean that I believe she actually had like that burning bush moment. I just think that she was looking at either rolling the dice at potentially spending the rest of her life in prison or taking a plea deal and being able to get out of prison before she turned 50. And that is what she would ultimately do. 8 months after Randy's murder, Teresa decided that it would be in her best interest, because this woman does nothing unless it is in her best interest, to fully admit to her role in her husband's murder and plead guilty to conspiracy to commit murder, and she received a sentence of 8 years. Rose Warren spent a good amount of time talking to her in this interrogation about her unwillingness to be forthcoming, her covering up for Pastor David, and what she needed to do that would be in the best interest of herself and her family. He questioned her extensively about the gun once again, about the track phones once again, about the conversations that she had with the pastor about killing Randy and how to go about getting the gun, about the affair and what Randy may have known or not known about it. He talked to her about her behavior and her demeanor when she discovered Randy's dead body, about telling her parents on the phone that Randy was shot, but failing to tell anybody else or explain how she knew that he had been shot. And towards the end, he will start drilling her about the nature of her relationship with the pastor and the context of the conversations that they would have about how they would be together one day. We're going to pick it up from there, where Rose Warren is going to start asking about the difficulties or tensions between the pastor and her husband. In the interrogation audio clips that I uploaded in episode 297, we're about halfway through, around about the hour and 40-minute mark or so, is where this discussion episode will start back up again from. The next thing that Rose Warren asked Teresa was, things have been difficult between Randy and Love since when? When did that all really kick up? Teresa took a deep breath and didn't answer. Then he asked, didn't he send an email to the pastor? Basically, it was kind of long and drawn out. This is the reason we've got to leave the church. How long ago was that? Do you know when that was sent? Because I remember that you came down the stairs or something and you were kind of crying and you told Miranda, I guess we're going to have to leave the church. And I think it was around the same time period, wasn't it? Teresa replied, yeah, it was actually the day after. They were playing basketball at the church, and Randy just kind of wanted to talk to Justin. I believe that Justin is the treasurer or whatever position the church has for handling money. And Teresa continued, he wanted to talk to him about what was on his heart, and he just wanted to talk to Justin. He didn't want Justin to respond. He just wanted to talk to him. And she started to stall, and then she kind of laughed, and she stalled some more. And Justin just took it all out of context and just flat out told Randy that he was wrong and that the pastor was always right. And that kind of got Randy upset. And he's like, it's over. I don't know exactly what his exact words were. I can't remember. But he just called me and said that he just got into it with Justin and he was just tired of everybody thinking that the pastor's always right and that we're leaving the church. And I was just kind of silent on the phone. I was crying, of course. Again, what is it with this woman? Were you silent or were you crying? Or you what? I mean, she can't even describe her phone conversations with any sort of consistency or any kind of truth. She continued, and he said, you could be mad at me if you want to. And I said, I'm not mad at you. And he just said, I'll see you in a few minutes. And I said, okay. Dreamers, there's no way this woman did not fight with Randy about staying in the church, especially if she's crying. She's going to try to tell us that she said nothing, but she cried. No way. This woman is way, way, way too controlling, too narcissistic, and too deeply ingrained in this church to just be like, okay, whatever. She's not going to stay quiet. In the face of the news that her husband is making her leave the church that she's been with for more than 30 years, and she certainly did not leave after Randy was murdered. She went back. She talked about it later on, way late, I believe the next day, to the FBI agents. She said she went back to the church. She leaned on the church for their support, their congregation support during her time of grief. She may have left out of just shame or embarrassment, but ultimately she went back. And as Jen H put it in the comments in the Facebook group, this woman's got some stones on her. Teresa continued, and then Justin called me. What I think was Randy accidentally called Justin, and he didn't mean to, but he did. And then Justin called the house thinking Randy called him. That's just stupid, dreamers. It doesn't make any sense, because if Randy butt dialed Justin could see the number and would have called right back if that was the case, if he wanted to call back. Why would he get a butt dial from Randy's phone and then call Randy's house asking if he called. This woman, I swear, is about as sharp as a bowling ball. She continued, and Justin told me, he said, you guys are our best friends, and just said that he was praying for us and stuff like that. And so I went downstairs and told Miranda that. Rose Warren asked, and what time frame was that? Do you remember? She said, do you need the date? No, just a month. A month, maybe? Oh, gosh. It was still cold outside, so it was probably the end of February. All right, so since February up till the end of March, how many conversations do you think you had with David Love in which he would seem to imply that he could take care of things? How many different times? Teresa stared at the ground and said, well, honestly, yeah, that's a frickin' joke. I don't know. To be honest with you, more stalling and stalling, stalling. Man, I don't know. She can't answer this question, dreamers, because it wasn't all David's idea to murder Randy, and there was never any implication. These two low-life pieces of shit had straight-up conversations about who, what, where, when, and how to murder Randy. They were together in on it, both of them, 1,000% all in. That's why she can't say, when did these conversations take place? Because it took place all the time, everywhere. They talked about it. They were in cahoots. Period. Rose Warren, after letting Teresa carry on with her evasiveness, he asked her, more than 5? And there's more stalling from Teresa. And then she asked, in the last couple months? Yeah, since February, since the blowout at the office. She said, probably. Yeah, probably. Don't you just love how Teresa literally doubled down on the vaguest response to a question you could basically have? She said, probably. Yeah, probably's my answer. Probably. Rose Warren next said, since the big blowout at the office, did that crank Brother Love up? Did that kind of crank things up? And he started blowing up your phone and everything? With more vagueness, Teresa said, pretty much. Rose Warren clarified, since that confrontation at the office, did he use that kind of language about taking care of things? Teresa said, I never talked to him after that. Just lies, lies, and lies. Teresa can't help herself but distance herself as much as she can from Pastor David during the time between St. Patrick's Day and March 31st, the day that Randy was murdered. And here, she gets very bold by denying even talking to the pastor during those 14 days. She claims, I never talked to him after that. And she strongly is shaking her head back and forth. No, she said, no, I never talked to him after that. And this is something they can prove. They know that they communicated through voicemails. And I'm sure there's a plethora of calls back and forth and a plethora of calls to each other's voicemails. She's so stupid. And I'm thinking that at least some of the phone records are sitting right there on the desk in front of her. But she'll claim they never talked. And Rose Warren asked, so prior to that he had been saying things like that, did he ever give specifics? And she quickly said, no. He said, well, tell me again what he said about the guns, about Randy's guns. And here we're just going to get more lies, more and more lies. She says, well, and this conversation only happened one time, and that's a big fat lie, and she just told a different story a few minutes ago. Well, it wasn't a few minutes ago per se, because it was actually included in episode 300. So if you're listening to this like weeks apart, it was a long time ago, but in this conversation that they're having, in the flow of it, it just happened. And I went back up to the part in my notes and I copy and pasted exactly what she said just moments before she said this. I literally recorded myself saying this. Quote, Rose Warren asked, how many conversations would you say you had in the last couple of months? Or if you have to go back further, that's fine. but within the last couple of months, how many times did this type of conversation come up between you and David Love? The way you're talking about Randy and taking care of things, and maybe you guys being together and guns. I mean, how many different times did this come up that you can remember? After more stalling, she replied, honestly, I don't know. I know it came up more within the last couple of months. Rose Warren replied, okay, are we talking more than 10? She quickly said, no. Less than 5? She said 5, maybe 6, something like that. And then I commented on how I love Miss 241 at the dress barn. Can't come up with anything more specific than that. So yeah, here she is saying this conversation only happened one time. But prior to that, she said she had no idea how many times they had this conversation because it happened so many times. And then she said it was 5 or 6 times. So she's basically had 3 different lies for this one question. But anyway, Teresa said this conversation only happened one time, and she's stalling, hair flipping, ceiling staring, exasperating exhale, and then she says nothing. Rose Warren asked about the guns. It only happened once? Tell me what you remember. Well, all he said was, Randy has showed me the gun. He's taken me down to the safe and he showed me his guns. It was Teresa who showed Pastor Love Randy's guns, and she will admit to that later on, that she opened the safe in front of him. And that was the lie she told to explain how David got the safe combination. Not that she gave it to him, because that would make her look really, really bad, and she can't have that on top of her terrible tan. So she claimed that the only way that she could think of that David got the combination was that he made note of it as he watched her unlock it. And you know what, dreamers? Now that I'm thinking about it, this is another stupid lie that she didn't think through very well, because isn't this a woman who's deathly afraid of guns? I mean, literally said she runs out of the room when her husband and her son bring the guns out to clean them. The whole thing about, I don't know anything about any guns, I don't like guns, I don't touch guns, I don't want to be around guns, I run away from guns when they're in my presence. Yet the only way to circumvent the accusation that she gave Pastor David access to Randy's guns is it was the only story that she could come up with, and just hope that nobody would put it together the way that we did here. This woman is not afraid of guns. She might not like handling guns, but afraid of them to a point where she will flee any situation where a gun is around is just utter bullshit. And further still, now that we've circled back to Teresa's gun nonsense, how cruel and depraved is this woman to have her own husband killed with a gun and then turn around and claim how terrified of guns that she is. Good thing Randy likely never saw it coming, since the piece of shit that shot him is a despicable coward himself as well. She continued after she said that Pastor David told her that Randy had taken him down to the gun safe to show him his guns. Teresa said, and I said, really? Yeah. Teresa said that Randy took Pastor down and showed him the gun safe. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay. And then we just kind of got off the subject because I didn't want to talk about it anymore. So yeah, dreamers, that was her answer. Exactly nothing. Absolute garbage answer this woman is giving. Rose Warren knows this answer is crap, so he said, but within that context, was he implying to you that he could take care of things with Randy's guns? Is that the implication? Is that how you took it? He got nothing but complete silence from Teresa. So he continued, I mean, your wheels had to be turning when he's talking about, we're talking about the pastor of a church, and he's talking about Randy's guns and taking care of things. Am I getting this wrong? And dreamers, literally in this video, if you have a chance to watch it, Teresa looks so freaking annoyed. And I'm pretty sure in this moment she rolled her eyes too. And she quickly replied, no. What you will hear next in the audio clips is probably one of the worst moments in terms of Teresa's inability to tell a convincing lie. After she said no when Rose Warren asked her if he was getting this wrong, she kept going and she said, then I would say, and she's stalling and stalling. No, I said, stalling, stalling. I kept telling him, I said, you need to leave it in God's hands. God's the one that's in control. And I kept telling him over and over and over again. Yeah, in this singular conversation, you had to tell him over and over and over again. And I kept telling him over and over and over again, if God wants us to be together, he will put us together in his time. Rose Warren asked, did David imply to you that he was willing to hurt Randy so you two could be together or even kill him? Did he imply that message to you? She said, yes, he did. Even though this is way out of sync with Teresa's sweeping denials, it's still a lie. This was never ever a thing that either one of them ever implied. Besides, she's moved on from complete denial of everything and moving towards placing the blame on David Love, now that her affair with him has been exposed. Rose Warren then asked, and did you tell him that's a no-go? Yes, I did. Did you tell him that that's an option? Oh, no. Did you ever imply to him or lead him to believe that this would be an acceptable option? No. I told him, I said, because he even implied it about his own wife. Tell me about that. Well, he even said that he would take care of her too. Detective Rose Warren finally sat up straight after being doubled over for a while, trying to stomach Teresa's blatant lies, and he says, all right, let me ask you this. We know that Randy was killed with his own Glock. This has very little reaction from Teresa, considering what she was just told. I mean, that's kind of a big deal, an important fact in this case. Randy getting killed with his own gun that she tried to hide ever existed. Being told that kind of news should have been shocking. She should have been like, wait, what? Killed with his own gun? How is that even possible? I thought he got rid of that thing months ago, but no. Teresa had zero reaction. He continued, we went out to your parents' house and got shell casings from when he used to target shoot. And they already told you. They told you that night that they found a shell casing at the scene. Well, the ballistics that was checked out there were the same. Same shell, same weapon. The only thing Teresa had to say to this was, okay. So he continued, I want to know how anybody could get into that office, get that Glock, and shoot your husband. Because we're talking about a former war guy, the Marine, the guy who knows karate, the guy who's on his game, the guy who's always looking around and looking out for you. How would anybody get that gun away from him? Teresa began shaking her head back and forth no, as she said, I don't know. You know, at this point, dreamers, Teresa's probably even sick of hearing herself say, I have no idea, I don't know, over and over again, because it's pathetic. You could even tell she's getting exhausted of hearing her own lies. Even the way she tells them is exhausting. I don't know, I have no idea. I keep asking myself all the time. I don't understand it. Wait, what? What in the holy hell is she talking about? I ask myself that all the time. Does she even hear herself? You would think she would consider how much she loves listening to the sound of her own stupidity. But Rose Warren just informed Teresa for the first time that Randy was killed with his own gun. Obviously, she already knows this, but she's not supposed to. And then she's asked how anybody would get that gun away from him, and her answer is that she keeps asking herself that same question all the time. How is she asking herself over and over again how anybody got that gun away from Randy when she just found out that he was killed with his own gun? She is so stupid. Rose Warren kept going. Well, we know that whoever went in there, one, knew the gun was in there and how to find it. Teresa interrupted him and said, and I didn't even know he had it in the office. But Rose Warren ignored her and continued, or two, somebody gave him the gun and they walked in there with his gun. And that makes more sense. Teresa's mind is spinning, and you will hear her struggle to find the right words to say that will not implicate herself, because we know that that's the direction this is now going. Rose Warren continued, because Randy's not just going to let anybody go into his office, go through the dresser drawers, right? I've been in the office. Nobody's going to go in there and even walk around in his office to the back of his desk, because that would be, other than you or Michael or Miranda, that would probably be very unusual for any customers or even church people to walk back there. There'd be no reason for them to go back in his space. Teresa found an opportunity here to try and redirect the conversation, as she laughed, of course, because this is such a hilarious conversation. And she says, no, he didn't even like me going back there. Rose Warren said, exactly. So the person who came in, my investigators, I trust them. I trust what they're telling me. He already had the gun. Whoever went in there already had the gun. Playing dumb, but at the same time, trying to dig information out of Rose Warren, Teresa replied, who had the gun? Who the frickin' frack do you think he's talking about? It bothers me so much when she asks these stupid questions that she already knows the answers to, just to buy herself some time to conjure up more lies. He answered, the man who killed your husband. He already had the gun. There's no way that he could have gotten that gun away from your husband. Literally, you could hear crickets chirping right now. Probably Teresa's hearing the same thing in her head. She has no idea what to say next, but she's trying really hard to think. And he kept going. The gun was passed off to him, is what I'm trying to tell you. That's why I got 20 detectives out there that want your head on a platter. Who would have passed that gun off to him? Only you would have been able to do that. If you think Teresa started nodding her head 5 seconds ago to fire off more denials, you would be correct. At the same time, she's trying to divert and distance and deflect. When she says, no, I don't touch guns. I don't like them. Well, honey, that doesn't mean you would not arrange for your lover to get his hands on it in order to carry out the plan that the two of you came up with to murder your husband. Plain and simple. Rose Warren said, but you were in the briefcase. Oh, yeah. Remember that, dreamers? Teresa placed herself as having gone into Randy's briefcase, where he was known to carry a gun, and she did so using the lie that she was looking for an Avon catalog that she asked him to bring to the office, and when she went looking for it, she opened the briefcase and she said it wasn't in there. There was no gun. In fact, there was nothing in the briefcase, she said. Teresa tossed her hair back and then rolled her eyes and stared at the ceiling. She has got to keep up. She's got to keep thinking up more lies, more and more lies, as this detective has her on the ropes, and he isn't going to let up. And the next detective is going to be worse, the one that tags in the morning. So Rose Warren said to her, I know you don't like guns, okay? I know you don't like guns. That's code for, I'm freaking sick and tired of hearing you tell me about how much you don't like guns when I know what you did. Teresa spoke over him, denying that the gun was in the briefcase. And he says to her that it really doesn't matter here from there. And Teresa started back with more spirited denials, just as ugly and fake as all the other denials that don't make any sense. And they're full of lies themselves. And she keeps stating, it wasn't in his briefcase. That's the only time I opened his briefcase. And she jabbed her index finger towards Detective Rose Warren yet again. And this woman is so rude and such a garbage person. She's literally lying to this man's face by telling him that in almost 20 years of being with Randy, 13 years in the insurance business together, and this is the only time she's ever opened her briefcase. Oh, and it happened to be the briefcase where he carries his gun. And it happened to be on the day that the gun goes missing. And And it also happened to be on the day that Randy had the dumb luck to up and get murdered. That's the only time in her life, ever in life, she opened his briefcase, she says. Oh, and dreamers, it gets better. Teresa continued, that's the only time I opened his briefcase, was to find that Avon book. Other than that, I never touched his briefcase. I never touched it. I never touched his briefcase, ever. And cue the contradictory statement coming up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Unless he asked me to go get something out of it. Okay, yeah. Teresa's got 99 problems and all of them are lies. 3 different stories in 3 seconds. It's like, again, which is it? That's the only time I ever went into his briefcase? I never went into his briefcase. Or, well, I went into his briefcase when he asked me to. Which is it? Just lies. More failure to take responsibility for even the everyday, mundane things like opening up your husband's briefcase for whatever reason. Rose Warren said, but you did go into his briefcase to look for that Avon catalog. Teresa will happily admit to this because she's already said it, and it gives her a chance to make her look like she's being forthcoming by finally not denying something that she said. So she says, yes, I did. Yes, I did. Rose Warren then drops the hammer. Did you take the gun out of there and pass it off to somebody? Teresa rolled her eyes again, and then she leaned into the detective almost as far as he has leaned into her, and she gets in his face and defiantly and arrogantly says with a tone and her arms thrown up in the air, the gun was not in his briefcase. The gun was not in his briefcase. And she is literally, again, pecking her head back and forth like an aggro chicken as she fired off those 2 denials about the gun not being in Randy's briefcase. Yeah, and if you want to see this, Teresa and her chicken head, it's around the 4-hour and 7-minute and 30-second mark of the 10-hour video. I believe it's in the show notes. If it's not for some reason, let me know. I sometimes forget to add them in. If you would like to see Teresa clucking around the interrogation room. But anyway, she carries on with it. The gun was not in his briefcase. Periods at the end of every single word. And she continues because, I don't know, maybe we will get a proper explanation as to why the gun wasn't in his briefcase. She says, because I laid it flat on the floor, I opened it up all the way, and there was nothing in it. Nope, she did it again. More off-topic, non-answers. This has nothing to do with the gun not being in there. It's desperation to distract and redirect. And mind you, Teresa is physically acting out all these actions as she's sitting there. She's pretending to go through the motions of looking through Randy's briefcase. Remember the briefcase that she never ever touches? That she's laid out on the floor, opened it up all the way to find nothing in it. Because Randy carries around an empty briefcase. And the briefcase that she's only opened this one time ever in life. Oh, wait, no. The one she never, ever, ever, ever opened. Right. Oh, no. That's the one that she would open whenever Randy asked her to open it. That's right. That's her final answer. Yeah. This, like everything else, falls onto somebody else's shoulders. Somebody else's responsibility. If Teresa ever touched his briefcase, it's because somebody else told her to do it. I opened it up all the way. There was nothing in there. He always had it. When I saw him carry it, and this was last year, when the last time I saw him carrying it in his briefcase, the Glock, he always put it at the side of the briefcase, underneath all his paperwork. But you could still see it. It was big. It was plain as day. You could see it in there. It was not there. I'm not really sure why Teresa thinks putting so much passion and emphasis behind her words as she says this is going to help. It would help if she had the same level of details when, say, talking about her conversations with Pastor David, when they discussed killing Randy and killing Kimberly and using Randy's gun, and one shot to the head would do it, and everything would be taken care of, and blah, blah, blah. Where's all the minutia and trivial bullshit surrounding those conversations all of a sudden? But, you know exactly in what position, underneath where Randy kept a gun that you allegedly never saw, well, maybe saw, or sort of saw, maybe last year, maybe not, maybe at Christmas. I don't touch guns. I'm afraid of guns. What gun? I don't know. Randy was shot? Huh? Also, Teresa provides an extremely vague time frame around this whole thing as well. The energy that this woman puts into irrelevant nonsense is actually kind of astounding. So when Teresa says that the gun was not there, despite everything, I kind of believe her. I'm still not 100% sure how she got the gun to Pastor David or how they set it up that he would get it. Randy may have started carrying the smaller gun because the Glock was big and bulky. Ultimately, in court, Teresa would plead guilty, and the story was the official story that she gave on the record is that she gave Pastor David the code to the gun safe in her basement and the code to either the front door or to the garage, and that Pastor David let himself into their house when they weren't there and got the gun in some close proximity to the day of the murder. So when she denied ever touching the gun, there's truth to that, and her desperation to be believed when she's being truthful is pretty evident. She's different when she's being so emphatic about certain small facts. After Teresa said that the Glock wasn't in the briefcase when she opened it, Rose Warren said, "Did you ask Randy about it?" "No." "Why not?" "Because I hadn't seen it in a long time, and he told me last year that he was thinking about selling it." Of course, that's the cover story for the gun that she and Pastor David concocted. If there ever came a time when Teresa was ever questioned about guns that Randy owned, that's what she was supposed to say. She continued, "He told me last year that he was thinking about selling it. And I said, well, honey, whatever you want to do. I don't care. It's your gun. You do whatever you want to do with it." Now, again, dreamers, Teresa's stone cold stupid here. She spent so much time telling the world how much she hates guns, that this is Randy's thing, that she has nothing to do with the guns, that when he brings them out, she runs away. She literally said that last time. So I ask, why would he talk to her about selling his guns then? Oh, wait, because by all accounts, Randy loved that gun. He was so proud of it. He was still showing it off to friends. He spent time with the son over the holidays that just passed a few months earlier cleaning it. He wasn't going to sell it. He still had all the accessories as well. This whole portion of the interrogation, as much passion as Teresa is trying to put into her story, it still doesn't make any of it true. And it's not, because he didn't sell the gun. He hadn't had it that long. He was really proud of it. He always showed it off. He just cleaned it up on Christmas, and it's the only thing missing. He still has the gun box and the ammunition and the holster. All the accessories were still in the house. And if he had sold it, those things would have been gone as well. So then Rose Warren asked, who would know where the Glock or a gun at all was? Who would know? Who would know about it and be able to get to it? It's a tough question, but the list of people is very, very short. Not just who knew about the gun, but who knew about it and could get to it. And as short as that list is, she is the primary person that would have access to the gun. Unless she wanted to try to blame Miranda. But fortunately, unlike some other parents that we've seen go on trial for murdering their significant others, there's a couple of them I could think of the top of my head where they try to blame their own children for the crime. Teresa, as much as it has maybe crossed her mind, I don't even know. I don't think she'd ever would have tried to pin this on any of her kids. It's not even like a fleeting thought. But she's putting as much of responsibility of what happened around this whole situation on her kids as possible. I think she does it to try to give her story some credibility, but she's not going to take responsibility for anything fully herself. If there is anything that she does take responsibility for, she usually throws in her children as being part of it as well. And if not that, then she'll just go with the old standby and all her denials. So now Teresa's had a little bit of time to think, and she finally says, well, here's the thing. Randy. So now Teresa's going to put the responsibility on, quote unquote, somebody. She says, every time somebody came to our house, and I hated this, but every time someone came to our house, he would always take them downstairs and show them his guns. Rose Warren replied, he's proud of his guns, but we're talking about the office here, because whoever murdered your husband, obviously they planned this murder to go down in the office. They wanted to make sure nobody was there. They certainly did not want to do it while you were there, right? And they wanted to use Randy's own gun. Somebody had to be able to go, like I said, it had to happen one or two ways. They went in there unarmed, wondering, okay, I'm going to go in there and see if I can't get this gun, and I'm going to shoot him with his own gun. That's the plan. That's not a very good plan. Because if Randy is sitting behind his desk, how are they going to get the gun, right? So that's not a good plan. Secondly, they're not even going to know for sure if the gun is going to be there, because even though he liked to carry guns, that doesn't mean he's going to take it that particular day. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm a cop, and sometimes I run out the door and I forget my gun, and I have to drive back home and get it. So they don't even know if the gun's going to be there. If they're going to go in there and assassinate your husband, and that's what they did, they've got to have a good plan. And it's not a good plan to go in there and just hope that I could somehow get around his desk, somehow open up the drawers and look for a gun, and then somehow be able to point it at him, wherever he may be, and shoot him. That's a bad plan, because a lot of things can go wrong. But if somebody has a gun in their belt and they walk through the door, they don't have to worry about the gun issue, because they've got the gun. This whole entire time that Rose Warren was saying all of those things, Teresa sat there expressionless, her head arrogantly cocked to the right, staring at the detective right in the face, with her arms obnoxiously crossed in front of her. And after everything Rose Warren just said, the first words to come out of her stupid mouth is, yeah, but. Let's see what garbage that Teresa has to say next. Yeah, but if Randy was in my office, and dreamers, as a reminder, Randy was found on the ground of her office, not his. The glass there in front of his office is a mirror glass, so he would be able to see and be prepared or something. Again, this has nothing to do with the case, totally irrelevant, doesn't even answer any questions at all. So he pointed out the obvious. He was in your office. Teresa stammered, but if he's... And then Teresa threw her hands up. She's so fed up and exasperated. And then he says, what I'm saying is, he's in your office. And she says, yes. Rose Warren stopped and said, it really doesn't matter where he's at. The point is, somebody either has the gun when they go in, or they know exactly where to find the gun when they go in. Teresa tries to squeeze in some denials as he's talking, but I didn't. And he says, does David know? And she cut him off and says, no, not that I know of. How would she know, right? She has nothing to do with guns, remember? Does David know that Randy kept a Glock or any other gun, like readily available right there in the desk drawer? Or right there by his monitor or something, what have you? Did you ever tell David that? Teresa started denying before he could even finish his sentence. No, I didn't discuss guns with anybody. Oh, really? Didn't you just say a little while ago that Pastor David often referenced guns in various conversations that you had with him over the past few months, and that was actually ramping up? Oh, these sweet little lies that she keeps telling. And she carried on. No, Randy is the one that discussed guns with everybody. He's the one that told everyone. And I don't even when Joe Christensen would come in to the office, or David Eisen would come into the office, he would show them his guns and this big knife that he has in his office. I didn't even like it when he did that. Yeah. Teresa said that all Randy ever talked about with everybody was guns, apparently, but never to Teresa, right? Because, of course, she's such a strong proponent against gun conversations. Rose Warren asked, how do you think somebody got that gun out of the office without Randy knowing about it? The typical reply spewed from Teresa once again, I don't know. I have no idea. Because and then nothing. Teresa can't come up with anything more. Rose Warren said, I don't want David Love to come in here and tell me that you guys met in some kind of parking lot where you had a gun wrapped up in an Avon catalog and passed it through the car window. Of course, Teresa has to deny the thing that has nothing to do with the thing when she said, the Avon catalog is at my house. Bitch, stop. You know damn well what Rose Warren was getting at. And he said, I'm just using that as an example. You know what I'm saying. And she replied, if he tells you that, he being David, he's lying. It's easy for her to say that with confidence for two reasons. One is that it didn't happen that way, which I believe it did not. And two, she's probably quite confident that Pastor David will stay quiet. Rose Warren replied to the notion that David Love would be lying if he said Teresa passed him the gun but if he tells me that, it's logical. He's lying, but you understand the reason. And she cut him off and said, I understand, but he's lying. You understand how hard it would be to get that gun away from Randy. Randy's not giving up his gun. Teresa started to yell real high and pitchy. Oh, I know that. I know that for a fact. Are you kidding me? I've lived with him for 20 years. I know that. All this shit, dreamers, is just Teresa desperately trying to stop over-denying and agreeing with the most innocuous things that she can. And then she said, that's what I don't understand. I'm sorry to say, but everybody understands. Everybody knows what's going on here. You just have to admit to it. The detective asked, is there anybody in the office while you were there that morning that would have access? Is there somebody you're not telling us about that went into that office that morning? Very quickly and loudly, Teresa said, no! Nobody was in there but Randy and I. No one was in our office but Randy and I. And that's the honest truth. Say it one more time, Teresa, I swear. I'm gonna freaking punch something. No one was in there. I don't think we even had one come in and drop off a payment except for the mailman. Did David Love ever tell you when he's yakking about taking care of things? Did David Love ever tell you something to the effect that, you know he keeps a gun in the office, this will be easy? Teresa, still going with the lies about the smaller gun, and said, well, he knew about the little gun, yes. David Love knew about the little gun? I think he even told me about that when I talked to him at the church. Yes, he knew about the little gun. What Teresa is failing to do here is to look and see that all of the facts have been placed right before her in order, in a sensible way, in a way that makes common sense, one by one. And all of this dancing around the truth with all of the garbage that she's trying to throw in there isn't going to change the fact that Randy was shot with a very specific gun, his gun, the Glock, and it's missing. And she needs to explain that because after Randy, she is the only person close enough to everything in order to have made this murder go down the way that it did. She was close to Randy, close to the office, close to the gun, close to the killer. If not for Teresa Stone, this murder would have never happened. But she's just so locked in on trying to run around the facts like they don't exist and to drop as many lie bombs along the way as she can in order to distort the truth as to what actually took place. And she's trying her darndest to circumvent the truth by mudding up the investigation and confusing the detectives. And she is just so too stupid to realize that these detectives are at least one group of men that she cannot manipulate. But she's still not ready to give up. She still thinks that she can somehow work her way around these detectives and their facts. Teresa started to talk about the Glock, but she stopped herself and she said, yes, David knew about the little gun, but as far as I honestly thought he got rid of that thing, he being Randy, because he told me he was going to sell it. Oh, yeah, during one of those gun conversations that she hates to have and runs away from, right? The Glock, I know he had it. She denied knowing anything about it in the first interview. Never forget that. She's acknowledging it now, but she denied that Randy ever owned a Glock in interview number 1. But I hadn't seen it in a long time. And when Michael found the case, she may have just thought up a lie to try and clean up the mess that she made with Michael and the search for the gun box. She says, when Michael found the case, I was shocked that we still even had it because he told me he was selling it. And when he sells guns or when he purchases a gun, he buys everything with it. So I could not believe that we still had the case. I think what she meant to say was she was shocked and couldn't believe that she forgot to get rid of those important pieces of evidence. Next, Rose Warren asked, when Michael went to look under the bed, why did you tell him no, don't look there, and you redirected him downstairs? Why did you do that? Teresa said, and this is good, dreamers. It's one of all of her lies, this series of lies is one of the best of her worst lies. She says, well, because I thought there was another gun under the bed, but there wasn't. It was down in the safe. Rose Warren asked, he's an 18-year-old criminal justice student. Who cares if he sees another gun under there? At this point, Teresa's really wound up now, and she quickly says, well, no, I just know that Randy used to put one under there. Okay, yeah, why would it matter, though? And she kept going. She's not even listening to Rose Warren as he's asking these questions in between her hysterical statements. And I don't think it was a Glock. We were looking for a box. Well, I know. I didn't know if it was under there or not. I didn't. But Rose Warren cut her off and said, why didn't you just go and look? He did look. Yeah, no, Teresa, you stopped him. Rose Warren agreed with me and said, no. He started to look, and my detectives told me that you basically encouraged him, no, don't look under the bed, and moved him away from the bed and pretty much pushed him out the door to go down to the safe. And then you and some other folks stood up there, and really, Michael had to almost bulldog his way back into the bedroom because he was determined to look under the bed because he was sure it was under that bed. The next thing Teresa does is try to turn this whole thing around by making herself come across as helpful rather than obstructive when she says, well, that's where Randy used to carry it. Oh, okay, you dumbass. Randy used to carry his gun under the bed. Now she's screwing up her grammar again. She's falling apart. It's been kind of a slow process, but the desperation grows stronger as her inability to lie grows stupider. Rose Warren kept going, and Teresa, she is so fed up. It's really difficult to watch this woman cry and sob and yell and lie and eye roll and scatter stories all over the place because she's trying to wiggle her way out of murder charges. She is such a slimy snake in the grass, but Rose Warren says, but why did you look like you were obstructing what the detectives were trying to accomplish? She said, no. And here comes yet another ridiculously fantastical excuse for why she obstructed the search. I was afraid that because Randy used to carry, he had 2 different guns that he used to carry under the bed. One was the Glock, and he had another one. I think it was like a 9mm or something. Okay, so now there were 2 guns that she knew of after claiming for weeks that she knows nothing about any guns. Listen to her basically be unable to even complete a sentence as she tries to continue to sell this new story. Well, Michael said that one was, well, I thought that there was one under the bed, but Michael said it was downstairs, so I was just kind of scared. I didn't want them. I was afraid that if they found the gun, that maybe we would get in trouble for having a gun under the bed. At this point in the audio clips that I uploaded for you, it cuts off there. This line of questioning goes on for a little bit more. You heard Teresa say that she thought she would get in trouble for having a gun under the bed. And yeah, that's the best that she could come up with. This woman, who's so terrified of guns, is sleeping with 1, maybe 2, maybe 0 guns that she knows nothing about underneath her. A woman who will run out of the room if Randy brings out his guns. Just sleeping there, right on top of loaded guns without a care in the world, and all of a sudden, for a woman who knows nothing about her husband's guns, sure knows a hell of a lot about the guns and gun boxes and everything that's kept all around the house and the gun safe, sleeping on top of them, apparently. And then she waves her arms around in dramatic fashion and says, "And that's all I know. I'm telling you the truth. On a stack of Bibles if I had one, and I don't swear. I'm telling you the truth. I did not know that we had that box under there. I did not know." No, honey, you knew it was there. You just forgot. Rose Warren asked, "And it was found where?" "It was found in our closet, underneath where we kept his shoes and stuff." She's going to contradict this story later on as well. "I did not know it was there. You should have seen the dust on it. I did not know it was there." Now here, Teresa really steps in it again, and she kind of mentioned it earlier, but she ends up blowing her whole story that Randy sold the gun out of the water when she says, "Here's the thing. Randy does not sell anything without giving everything away." Rose Warren said, "Exactly. Yeah, that's what he's been saying all along. The story that she's been trying to tell here and there about Randy selling the gun isn't true, and now she's providing the proof and the evidence of that right here." It's not in the audio clips I uploaded, but it's in the 10-hour video. I was finally able to hear the theory about this gun box and what Teresa did when she sent Michael and the officers away to the basement to look for the gun box instead of under her bed. And I've talked about this, but I haven't been able to really settle on an idea of what I think may have happened to the gun box, but I think I have an idea now. After Teresa said Randy does not sell guns without giving everything that came with the gun, Rose Warren said, "Exactly. Yeah, to his point, the gun was never sold by Randy to anybody. He had the gun up until the day he died, and somehow Teresa and David stole it from him in order to kill him with it, plain and simple." Rose Warren continued, "Now a Glock. At the factory, the fire test rounds, they keep a couple shells, and it goes in the box and it goes with the customer. There were no shells in that box. Do you know what happened to them?" "No, I don't. I have no idea." "Did they get it out of the gun case downstairs? Is that what you're talking about?" "I'm talking about the box itself." "Oh, no, I don't know." "The Glock box. There were no empty shell casings that normally come with the box when the gun is sold or bought." "I have no idea. I have no idea. I don't know." Rose Warren laid into her. "You see, when I've got detectives that say it looks like she's obstructing us from finding the box, and then we actually find the box after you've been upstairs alone for a few minutes while they've been downstairs," Teresa here defiantly slipped in another denial by talking over Rose Warren when she said, "I wasn't upstairs alone." He paused and said, "Huh?" Before he could even finish the word "huh," Teresa repeated herself, "I wasn't upstairs alone." And he says, "Oh, there was a couple of people with you? Pastor David was there, wasn't he? Because that's somebody who, if he saw anything suspicious going on, it wouldn't worry him because he is somebody suspicious." And she replied, "No, I don't think so. He wasn't there that day." And at this point, they're talking over each other, but Rose Warren did say something to the effect that he saw the reports and that David Love was there that day. So Teresa rolled back on that lie and said another lie. "Well, he may have been in the living room. I was in the bedroom with my attorney, Mrs. King, I think. I don't remember who else was in there." And yeah, her attorney being in there, I mean, that would be her defense attorney. So it's like they have this client attorney privilege that cannot be broken, even if he did see something incriminating, or she said something incriminating, he has to keep it to himself. Rose Warren's kind of sick and tired of hearing Teresa's voice, so he said, well, we don't need to beat that to death. I think we do, but I get sick and tired of hearing her voice too. I don't care if Teresa wants to deny that anybody was in the room with her that day. She's a very, very slippery woman, and I have no doubt that she would be able to very easily manage to create an opportunity for her to move that gun box out from under the bed, to take the sample shell casings out of it, and then place that box into the closet where it was ultimately found. It wasn't so much that she didn't want them to find the gun box. She didn't want them to find those shell casings. But true to Teresa Stone's form, she forgot about the shell casings that Randy left behind when he went practice shooting at Teresa's parents' house with the gun. Just like she forgot about several other important details that would ultimately expose her. It doesn't matter if she was upstairs alone or not. Here he's saying Pastor David was up there with her, and she's saying it's her attorney. But nobody else was definitively identified as having been in Teresa's bedroom with her at all times the day of the search. Rose Warren knew Teresa had a moment to herself upstairs, and that's when she quickly slipped those shell casings out of the box and put them wherever she put them. And then with the pastor there and her attorney, those are two people that she doesn't have to explain herself to at all. She put that box in a closet. I have no doubt this woman found a way to hide evidence right under the noses of law enforcement. Rose Warren finally told her the reality of it all. This is why people think that you had more involvement in this than you're disclosing. You add all this stuff up together. Oh, I'll sum it up for you. The lies about the affair, the gun, the burner phones, telling her parents before anyone else knew what had happened to Randy that he had been shot, hiding text messages, hiding voicemails, the love letter, obstructing the search warrant, hiding the gun boxes, and, of course, creating an elaborate alibi for herself during the time period when the murder took place, and then everything in between. That's what happens when you add up all this stuff together. It doesn't look good, Teresa, he said. It doesn't look good at all. She continued denying by shaking her head back and forth and saying, I did not. And he kept going, telling her that nobody is saying that she's the one that planned this all. Nobody says that she's the mastermind. But what everyone is saying is that at some point, when the decision was made that Randy had to die, she was brought into it and she did not stop it. Matter of fact, she made herself unavailable for the whole afternoon to make sure that she wasn't going to be in the office. And she continued to repeat, I did not. He said, you know what I mean? Yes, I do, but I did not. She started up with the air tears once again, and she went on to deny, no, I did not. I did not want my husband to die. Yeah, the fuck you did. Rose Warren kept going. Even your actions at the scene are suspicious. The fact that you didn't tell dispatchers that your husband had been shot, even though you knew he had been shot. She tried denying having knowledge that Randy was shot by saying, I wasn't sure. I didn't know for sure. But she was sure. She knew. And she screwed up badly when she slipped up and told her parents. And he even said it to her too. You were sure when you talked to your mom. I told her that I thought he had been shot because, and here she points a finger gun at her temple. And of course, more stupid shit comes out of her mouth. I have watched enough TV. And dang it, dreamers, he cut her off. I wanted to hear what she was going to say about watching enough TV. But he cut her off and said, but you didn't tell the dispatchers. You didn't tell the police that. Also not included in the audio that I uploaded, there's a portion of this interview where Rose Warren confronts Teresa about her initial reactions upon finding Randy's body. He said, "I'll be honest with you. We've talked to a lot of people. You've been married to this man for 20 years. And he's lying there, and the way he's laying with all that trauma, and to see that would send most people flying out the door screaming for help. If nothing else, they want to get away from that. But what do, Teresa? You actually walk over the top of him." Her answer to this? "I was trying not to panic." Why not? She panics whenever there's a gun around. She acts like she's afraid of her own shadow. But she chooses the scene of her husband's violent murder to decide to not panic? Whatever. And he continued, "But you had a cell phone." Teresa talked over Rosewarne, but I couldn't understand what she said. But she said something along the lines of, "I didn't even think about using the cell phone." You know what? She had 2 cell phones, and she's going to try to sit there and say her first thought was to use the landline with 2 cell phones right there that she so gingerly placed on the desk upon finding Randy's body? She said she set them down on the desk, stepped over Randy's body, put on her headset and called her parents, and then stepped back over Randy's body, rehearsed her performance for 9 minutes, dialed 911, and then ran out the door in dramatic fashion, started flopping around on the ground like she's in the NBA. Rosewarne said, "Your actions are just so abnormal. I'm telling you, all these little things that people see. People see these things and they say, that doesn't sound like somebody that just walked in to find her spouse dead. That looks like somebody who expected to see that when they came in." Teresa's sobbing, "No, I did not expect to see that." But Rosewarne continued, "All these little things, and there's a bunch of them that people have pointed out." But at this point, Rosewarne is going to lighten up a little bit, and he told Teresa that she's told him some things that he didn't expect that she would. But she did that, and he's proud of her for coming forward. But she whined, "But you don't believe me." Oh, at least the woman can read the room. Then he goes down a short list of some of the things that he believes. But then he says that he wants to believe that when she walked into the insurance office, that she did not expect to find her husband injured or killed. And she sobbed, "I didn't. I was expecting them to be talking or arguing or something. I wasn't expecting anything like that. Not at all." Rosewarne challenged her and said, "But you're helping David for the last 20 days by not coming forward. A woman who has lost her husband like that should be burning up my phone. You should have been burning up my phone. Do you realize that in the 3 times that you've been talked to now, and all that time that I talked to you last week and today, and I've talked to you on the phone a couple times, not one time have you said, 'Do you know who the bastard is that killed my husband? Do you know? What are you guys doing to find the killer of my husband? I want to know what you people are doing.' That's what I get from family and relatives on all of my other homicides." Teresa tried to defend her lack of interest in her husband's unsolved murder by saying, "But I haven't been taught that way." That is all this woman had to say in response to what Detective Rosewarne described how other family and relatives behave. "I haven't been taught that way." And he said, "I'm not saying that you have to curse. How ironic. Participate in the murder of my husband? Yes. But say curse words? Hell no, right?" Rosewarne continued, "But you never even asked me, Detective Rosewarne, please tell me you've got some news for me. Tell me you've got some leads. Tell me you think you know what happened." Teresa indignantly leaned in. She got into Rosewarne's face again, slammed her fist into the table at the same cadence as she said, "Because I am the type of person who does not want to bother people. I'll murder them. I'll have them murdered. I'll lie, cheat, and steal my way into hell, but bothering people? No way." Rose Warren can't believe the shit that is coming out of this woman's mouth when he says, "Your husband of 20 years?" She cut him off and slammed both of her fists down and said, "I know that. And you're not even going to ask me how the investigation is going? Are you kidding me? I think about it all the time." And then he finally accused her. "You don't want to know if we're making progress because you're afraid we're going to find something out. You should have been burning up my phone. I understand why you're afraid, why you're embarrassed about the affair. I understand that. That's normal that you wouldn't want to talk to me about that. But that text message that you got," and he picked up Teresa's cell phone that was sitting on the desk, and he put it in her face. "That text message that you got, urgent, don't go there. You didn't even bother to tell us that." Oh, dreamers. And this bitch cut him off and said, "Well, it wasn't on that phone." I mean, seriously? That's what she has to say for herself when she received the text message confirmation from Pastor David that basically informed her that the deed was done and the only thing that she wants to do is make sure that this detective looks foolish or stupid by telling him that the text message wasn't on that specific phone. Really? If that was me, I would jump all over her and be like, "Okay, let's talk about the phone that the message was sent to. Do you want to talk about that phone? Yeah, let's talk about that. Oh, wait, no, we can't because you flushed it into oblivion." This woman is so arrogant. Her tan is still so ugly. Some jail time will fix that for sure, though. He continued, "You haven't even asked me how we're doing. You didn't ask me if we're getting close. You didn't even tell me that you suspected David Love of being involved in this." Here, Teresa slipped into some deep thinking at this point. She's slouching. She's not looking at the detective anymore. She's starting to look pretty haggard, which she kind of was already when she first came in, but it's getting worse. The detective started working on building her back up a little bit by talking about what a monster David Love is. And if it is true that he organized the killing of her husband, he will kill again, namely his own wife, Kimberly. But dreamers, we all know damn well that this woman doesn't give two shits about Kimberly Love. She was hoping this whole thing would blow over so that the two of them could begin to start to plot her death next. Then it's on to the wedding planning and honeymoon in Paris. Teresa was quiet for a while, and when she finally did speak, she made it sound like she's going to say something profound or earth-shattering, case-solving, an admission of some sort, but no. This woman is so wrapped up in herself, she just can't bring herself to do it. But she said, "You know I want to say something else, don't you?" "Yes, I know you do. I'm begging you to try and let me help you." She said to Rose Warren, "I just want you to know one thing. I never expected this to happen." And, of course, it's yet another lie. But Rose Warren rolls with it and he says, "I know you didn't. But what did you expect to happen?" Of course, once again, Teresa's answer is self-serving, and it places all of the blame and responsibility on Pastor David when she says, "I expected him to leave me alone, to leave me alone." Yeah, now she's playing the victim while her husband's dead and gone forever at her own behest, but she's the victim. And Rose Warren, he's so patient, but he says, "But he didn't." She said, "I can't believe this is happening. I really can't." Well, I'm sorry to say, when you plan a murder, somebody tends to die, and then the people who planned it kind of sort of have some consequences to face. What's so hard to believe about that? But now here Teresa tries another tactic, kind of like Leticia Stogg, who I think I'm going to go into her very, very soon. Suddenly, Teresa begins to feel sick. She said, "I'm making myself so sick, I'm sorry." Oh, you're making yourself sick. So you're actually fine. You're just making yourself sick. She might as well said, "I'm making myself so sick, so all of this will end and I can go home." And in the video, Teresa starts some heavy breathing, Rose Warren, he's in full character too, don't forget. She's not the only one putting on a show. So is the detective. He puts his hand on top of hers, and when he did that, I could almost feel her murdery cooties jumping all over his hand, and he asked her if she's all right. Even though this detective is being overly nice, it's not going to work. Teresa will never be completely honest at any point in all the hours and hours that she was questioned. She's never honest about the important things to try to help solve her husband's murder. So seeing Rose Warren extend a sympathetic gesture made me start to feel kind of sick. So this next section of the interrogation you will hear on the audio clips that I uploaded. The host that put the audio together pulled some key parts with his own commentary, so I made them kind of transition together pretty smoothly while removing his dialogue, but there's so much that he left out. That's why you're hearing stuff. That's why I'm telling you what you will hear and what you won't hear. I want to give you a really good idea of just how pathetic this woman is, and I think you've got the gist of it. She can go on and on for hours like this, piling lies on top of lies on top of lies with so much ease in the face of very seasoned detectives. This woman who's scared of everything is not cracking under the pressure at all. But Rose Warren, he's able to pull some stuff out of her. Teresa was quiet, but she finally says, "God help me, please. God help me, please. He told me that Wednesday night. He told me that Wednesday evening at the crime scene, that if you guys ask about the gun that Randy sold 3 months ago, I just have this feeling that he took it. I don't know how. I don't know where." Rose Warren challenged this story and said, "So you think that gun's been gone for 3 months, but Randy's never talked to you about that?" She shook her head no and said, "He told me that." Rose Warren cut her off and said, "At the crime scene, if police ask about Randy's gun, you're to tell him that he sold it 3 months ago? Do you think he sold it to David?" She whispered, "I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know." All of these statements she's making as she sobs and she cries, and she's acting like she's caving in and giving up the goods on Pastor David, but it's still all lies. She's still in save her butt mode. So her strategy is to appear cooperative and to give up as much as she can on David without implicating herself. That's still her strategy. It's been ever since they found out how close she was with David. Next, she says, "He told me I should have called you." And she's referring to the text message where he said, "Seriously urgent, don't go to the office by yourself." He should have said that in a phone call or in a voicemail. And you know what he kept telling me? And he slammed her fist on the desk again for dramatic effect. He kept telling me everything was gonna be fine. She added some more sobbing in for also more dramatic effect as she exclaimed, "He took my baby away from me." Rose Warren jumped all over that and said, "How do you know it was him?" Teresa went quiet. "Did you know it was him before you came into this room today?" Teresa really hesitated, and she somehow managed to shake her head both yes and no, but ended in yes. "Is that a yes?" She shook her head again. "How did you know?" Teresa didn't answer, but instead said, "I can't believe he did this." He asked again, "How do you know it was him before you came into this room tonight?" Again, she didn't answer and said, "You know I haven't been sleeping." "Yeah, I know you haven't. This is tearing you up." "I'm tired of protecting a godly man," she said, "supposedly a godly man. He told me in my room the next day." So this is the first time Teresa has admitted to having the knowledge that Pastor David murdered Randy. She's claiming it happened the next day. That's when she allegedly found out. But we all know, and she knew in advance, but it's something, right? It's a little something she's giving up. It's still not a good look that she knew the day after the murder, but kept it to herself for the next 20 days. Rosewarren told Teresa to have courage. Then she tried a new sympathetic tactic. She started to hyperventilate. You will hear her in all of her tanned glory about an hour and 52 minutes into the audio that I uploaded, not including my intro. She is huffing and puffing, but Rosewarren kept going. Teresa, what did he say? He said, if you tell them, I'm going to go to jail for murder. If you tell them what? Teresa, if you tell them I'm going to go to jail for murder, but tell them what? He didn't specifically say, I don't know. He just said, if you tell them that I did it, I will go to jail for murder. Rosewarren replied, if you tell them I did it? Teresa continued, he told me that. Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you tell us that information? She replied, I guess I was just angry at him. I just thought maybe God would just take him away and punish him. Rosewarren switched gears real quick and asked, why did he go to Colorado? She said she didn't know. Was he scheduled? She said, I didn't know they were going out of town. What about Shelton? That's the pastor's son. I didn't know he was leaving either. I was gone. He had told me a couple of months ago that he was going to take his wife away for her birthday, and he told me that Shelton was going with them, but wound up going to South Carolina instead. Rosewarren switched back to the murder and said, did he tell you when he went in there? Did he tell you what happened? Teresa was quiet for a moment before she said yes. What did he tell you? This is probably, of all the things that we've talked about, this is probably the most important. What did he say happened? Teresa will reply, but not with a direct answer, and she said, you want to know what I told him? I said, this is not the way God wanted it to be. Oh my God, woman, just stop. This is the way your ass wanted it to be. Rosewarren asked her, where was this conversation? In your room? She shook her head yes and said, I was so mad at him. The fuck you were. He said, what did you tell him then? And she replied, I told him, I said, I think I really told him I hated him. I told him not to touch me. He kept telling me it was going to be fine. He kept telling me everything was going to be fine. He just told me that he didn't see it coming. Of course he didn't see it coming. That was his former best friend and pastor. Who thinks they're going to be shot to death just like that, right there? Nobody thinks that. Rosewarren moved his seat closer to Teresa, and he said, okay, what else was said? Teresa started sobbing harder and creating all kinds of noise at this point. He asked her, did he say how it happened? She shook her head no. He just said that Randy didn't see it coming? She shook her head yes, and she ramped up the heavy breathing again. Did he say that he did it? Teresa's hysterical, and she replied, he didn't come out and say that he did it. He just said, oh my God, and she doubled over to hide her fugly crying, not crying face. He said, Teresa, we're just going to finish this, and we'll get you some water or something, okay? But we need to finish up this little part, okay? What else was said? Teresa replied, that was it. When he says he never saw it coming, what did you say? I looked at him and I was like, what? What are you talking about? And then that's when he told me that. And he said he walked in the office and he just aimed and he didn't even look. Rosewarren was either surprised or acted surprised. Probably acting, to be honest. But he said he did that? That's what he told me. So he said he pulled the trigger. Teresa nodded yes and sobbed. That's what he told me. He said he just aimed and he didn't even look. He just did it. And I walked out of the room because I didn't want to talk to him anymore after that. I'm not going to protect him anymore. He asked, did he say how we got over there? Teresa sobbed, no. Did he say what time it happened? No, he didn't tell me any of that stuff. He didn't tell me anything. You just went on for 5 minutes about all the things that he told you, and now you're saying he didn't tell you anything. Okay. All he told me was that, oh my God. Rose Warren asked, "Did you believe him?" She repeated, "Do I believe him?" He repeated, "Do you believe him?" She replied, "Yes." "Do you know where he was between noon and 3 or 4? Do you know what his schedule was when he came or where he was at?" Teresa said, "Somebody told me he was at the hospital, but I don't know what time. I don't know where. I don't know anything." As she continues to tell us what she knows, supposedly. He told me he even told me he had on gloves. Okay, now as we talk, you keep remembering little things, so I don't want you to forget anything. Teresa replied, "I'm tired of protecting him." Rose Warren said, "Like I said, you just told me about the gloves, so I'm learning about the gloves. What else do I need to know? Because we're not going to protect him, and by gosh, if he did this, by gosh, you know where he needs to be. And where she needs to be too, right? But we have good, accurate, detailed information. You've got to dig in that head of yours." After a moment, Teresa said, "He told me the gun was 20 miles away." Rose Warren asked, "Did he say where he dumped it? What about the phones?" Teresa is shaking her head back and forth, no, so hard. Her almost looks like her head's going to fall off. "Well, you got rid of the phone, right?" And she switched up to nodding yes. "And he said he ran over his, but I don't know. Is this the reason you tore the phone up, because of what he said in the parking lot about the gun? Were you scared that the phone might implicate you guys?" She nodded yes. "So he says in the parking lot, by the time your wheels are turning, right? Because he's telling you if they ask about the gun, you tell them he sold it 3 months ago." This next part, what Teresa says, is classic for someone who's totally guilty, and I love it so much that she actually had the nerve to say it. Realizing that her eyes and face are completely dry, and mind you, she's been sobbing for quite a while by now, she says, "Isn't it awful? I'm so scared, and I'm so upset that my tears won't even come out of my eyes." Yeah, they're not coming out of your freaking eyes. Rose Warren has got to be laughing on the inside when he reassures you, "It's okay, all right? It's okay. It's okay to be scared." The audio clip will cut off here, but I'll continue to tell you what is said that's not included, and then I'll let you know when it picks back up again. So the next parts that I'm going to talk about, you're not going to hear on the audio. If you want to listen to it in the 10-hour interrogation, this next section is about at the 4-hour and 40-minute timestamp. Rose Warren next asked, "Did he say anything else about where the gun is at? Did he say anything else about anything that will help us?" She replied, "He didn't tell me where it was at. He just said it was 20 miles away. And I never asked him. I was so mad and angry." "But you're absolutely sure that he pulled that trigger?" Teresa replied, "Yes, that's what he said." Rose Warren asked, "Did he say it to anybody else?" She shook her head and said no. "Did he ever talk about when he left, what he did after he left, where he went, what he did?" "No. I heard from my mom and Kim that he was at a hospital visit. That's what took him so long." Rose Warren cut her off and said, "It took him long? We've been told that he was over at St. Jude. I think it's St. Jude, something like that. Visiting one of your church people." She replied, "Yes, that's what I was told. After that, I don't know." Rose Warren said, "Well, what I'm talking about is when you were in the room talking after what he admitted that he did he give any mention about what he did when he left Farmers after he shot Randy?" "No." "Did he say where he went?" "No, he did not." "Did he say where he went, what he did?" "No, he did not." "Did he say where he had come from?" "No, he didn't tell me any of that." "Nope, he didn't tell me anything like that." "I don't know. I guess I didn't want to know." She knows exactly where he was at all times. I'm sure she kept track of him. "Do you think he would have involved anybody else in something like this?" Teresa said, "You know what? I thought I knew this man." 10-year-long affair? Yeah, you did." But she repeated herself, "I thought I knew him." Do you think his son Shelton would have been involved in this in any way? Teresa began to sob and she cried, I would hope not. He's in enough trouble as it is. The reason why Rose Warren is asking is because it was Shelton's car that was seen near the scene of the murder, not Pastor David's. I mentioned that earlier, that Shelton had his license suspended for the DUI, so he wasn't driving at the time. His dad was. When he went to the scene to commit the murder, he was driving his son's car. When he came back at the news of Randy's murder to come and be the pastor and be the beacon of comfort, he came in his own car. Rose Warren next asked, what kind of trouble was he in, meaning Shelton? Teresa replied, he got caught drinking and driving. We found out the hard way. Rose Warren said, Randy wasn't happy about the way it was handled, was he? The church kind of paid for all that kind of stuff and covered it up. Is that my understanding? She replied, yeah. Randy and I talked about it, and he felt like he should resign. Rose Warren said, the pastor or Shelton? And she said, both. And I kept praying that God would just let them resign and leave. I did. I kept praying for that over and over again. From there, they talked more about Shelton and the pastor's relationship. Rose Warren is wondering if Shelton helped out in the crime or was a lookout or something like that, but no, that wasn't even an issue. Teresa and Pastor David did all of this on their own. Teresa also brought up how Shelton was caught engaging in homosexual acts. Rose Warren said, yeah, at Bob Jones University, and Teresa said, yeah, I guess you know quite a bit, huh? Yeah, we know a lot. Yes, Teresa, they've been knowing, and you're not fooling anybody, Miss Stone Cold. I'm crying so much my tears won't even come out of my eyes anymore, Teresa. Then he proceeds to tell her how much manpower has gone into investigating Randy's case, and that they've found out all kinds of stuff. So this developed into a concern about Shelton. It didn't happen, that's why I'm kind of just glossing over these details, looking for things to call Teresa out on mostly. However, it doesn't take long for Teresa to launch off into more details in the next few minutes, as Rose Warren is looking for any other kind of motives as to why the pastor would want Randy dead. If Shelton had a grudge on him, if Randy threatened to out him as being gay. As Rose Warren says, I'm just looking for motive here. So do you think any of that ever came into play? Or was it just David's love for you and his affection for you? And Teresa's answer is so dumb, and she says, well, not that I know of. I mean, I didn't think, no, I wouldn't think, wait, what? This whole time, she's been talking about how they discussed killing Randy in order to be together, and she claims to have only ever told him to leave it in God's hands. She's at least half a dozen times said this. But now to the question of David's motive was his love for her. She says that not that she knows of. That's the dumbest answer I've ever heard. Then Rose Warren starts in with some bullshit of his own when he says, well, I'm not trying to put ideas in your head. It just seems like you're being very honest with me right now. And yeah, bullshit. And they talk more about Shelton being gay, but it's really not relevant to the story. Rose Warren finally says that he's going to get Teresa some water, and he stepped out of the room for a few moments. And when he comes back, even Teresa can tell that he's a bit overwhelmed with all the information that she's provided him in this interrogation. So much so, she even asked him what was wrong. And he just basically told her that he's trying to process everything that they've talked about. In other words, he knows he has the daunting task of figuring out what's the truth and what are the lies. I would say 99% of what she said is either a partial lie or a full-blown lie. I think there are so few moments that any nuggets of truth fell out of this woman's pie hole that it is going to be a difficult task for Rose Warren to pick through it all. But he decided to circle back to the gun again. He really wants to know how the pastor got his hands on Randy's gun. We know that Teresa provided him with access or gave it to him. I don't know what the truth is, but she will never reveal that during these talks. She will never admit to having prior knowledge that the murder was going to happen. She will never admit that she fully intended to continue her relationship with the pastor following Randy's murder, nor will she ever admit to how the pastor got the gun. She does later on when she takes the plea deal, but even then, you really cannot trust this woman that that was the actual truth. So Rose Warren next says, the gun doesn't make any sense to me. The gun really bugs me. How David Love got that gun. Of all people in the world, the church pastor, how in the world could he have got his hands on that gun without Randy noticing? He's implying it had to have gone missing on the day of the murder, or at most a day or two before. Otherwise, Randy would have noticed. He would have asked Teresa about it, and then he would have reported it, but he did none of that. Teresa replied, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know. The only thing that he's ever said to me was, Randy showed me his guns in the gun case downstairs in the safe. The story changes, by the way, but all lies still. Teresa continued, and unless he watched Randy open the safe to show it to him. And dreamers, I'm sorry if all of this is redundant, but Rose Warren really, really wants to know how David got that gun, and he keeps asking, and this won't be the last time. Rose Warren said, he even admitted to you that he walked in with the gun, meaning that he didn't grab it from Randy or anywhere else in the office. He had it in advance, because she said he just walked in, pulled the trigger without even looking. So he had the gun already with him, and she has admitted to that. I'm not even sure if she realized that she's admitted to that. Teresa was able to come up with another lie in order to further this narrative by saying, the only thing, because when we would go out of town, he would always have someone come by and check our house and stuff like that. The only ones that I know of that could even get into our house was Pastor and Justin and my parents. Rose Warren asked, your pastor had access to your home? Kind of incredulous. And she said, well, because we would have him go in and, bring in the mail or the paper or something. And dreamers, I do find this hard to believe, but if it is a lie, then it is an excuse for David to have an opportunity to get the gun without Teresa's help. So yeah, if this is a lie, which it could be, it might be the truth, but as always, it's true to form for Teresa because it's very self-serving. I don't really think it's the truth because of all the people that Randy and Teresa knew, including her parents, his mom, his sister, her brothers, her sister, all of their friends and church people. Randy would be okay with the guy messing around with his wife to bring in his mail while they're on vacation. I guess it could be one of those keeping his enemy closer type of things, but she will claim that Pastor David had the garage code and that Randy was the one that gave it to him. Again, it's never her fault. Rose Warren said, you're telling me that the pastor had your garage door code? And she said, well, I know he's given it to the pastor and Justin and my parents only because, we've asked them to, do things at the house while we're gone, mow the grass and stuff like that. And they have to get into the house to get the key to unlock the shed because it's downstairs. But I don't know how you'd get into the safe. I just don't know how he could have got it. I mean, I don't think Randy would have sold the gun to him without telling me. Why not? You don't talk to him about guns. You hate guns. You're scared of guns. You want nothing to do with guns. You run out of the room whenever there's anything gun-related going on. Randy never talked to her about guns. She's been trying to ride that narrative this whole time. Yet here she says, I don't think Randy would have sold it without telling me. I guess she forgot. Oh, wait. She remembered that that's a lie, too, after she said, I don't think Randy would have sold it to him without telling me. And then she said, well, I mean, he doesn't tell me anything about his guns, really. Seriously, he doesn't tell me that much about his guns because I don't like him. And he knows that. I don't even like it when Michael talks about them. So, but I'm not sure he would have told me. So not only did she tell a lie and realize that it contradicted previous lies, so then she told another lie to match up with the previous lies, but then she told a third lie to match up with the lie that she just told. Did you catch all of that? First she said, I don't think Randy would have sold it to him without telling me. And then she said, well, I mean, he doesn't tell me anything about his guns, really. Seriously, he doesn't tell me that much about his guns because he knows I don't like him. I don't even like it when Michael talks about him. And then she said, but I'm sure he would have told me. All in the same sentence, basically. Rose Warren kind of finally sort of called her out and said, the questions about the guns, when we talk about guns, you seem to be very uncomfortable when we talk about them. I don't like them. I don't like talking about them. I don't like touching them. It's not like there's a gun in here. I know, I'm just saying. He said, I'm just saying, in this line of questioning, it seems to make you very uncomfortable and nervous. I just don't like talking about them. I just don't like guns. I never have. But that's the thing that he told me, he being David, was to just tell them that he sold the gun 3 months ago. He just whispered in my ear, and I barely caught it because I was walking away from him. So it was about this moment, just before 5 hours into the 10-hour-long interrogation tape, there was a knock at the door, and Rose Warren left the room for a moment. Another detective named John something, and I couldn't understand the last name, came back in with Rose Warren. This is the detective who later on, after talking to Teresa for a minute and seeing that she's just going to keep on rolling in her own bullshit, that he's going to try a lie on her eventually. We already talked about it, but this is the detective who is the one that tries to sell this lie in order to get some information out of Teresa, and unfortunately, it does not work. This woman is really committed to her story, and no lies are going to get her to change hers. Detective John doesn't have the same nice tone that Teresa has been babied with all this time, and he says to her right off the bat, here's the deal, Teresa. Here's the deal. Rose Warren has been 100% honest with you. David's in custody, and he's talking. Right now is your chance, and you've probably got about 10 minutes to tell us everything that's going on with this, because a lot of things you're saying doesn't make any sense. At this moment, Rose Warren left the room, so her security blanket is now gone, and she's going to get confronted pretty harshly now with no one to save her. As for the notion of being told that what she says doesn't make any sense by Detective John, she replies, about what? I need to know about what? Detective John said, you've been honest, but he's had to drag it out of you. She said, I'm scared. And I understand that. But the fact is, David is in custody, and he's talking. And it's like Detective Rose Warren has said to you. It's the first person that comes in and is being 100% truthful is the one that's the winner. She said, right, okay, yes. When did David get the gun? That's the most important thing right now. Teresa shook her head no and said, I don't know. All he told me is he had a way to get it. That's all he told me. When did he tell you that? It's been a while. It's been several months. Wait, what? Whoa, whoops. Did she just admit to advanced knowledge of a murder that hadn't taken place yet? I do believe she just did. Detective John asked, what exactly was the conversation? She replied, he just told me that, stalling, deep breath, trying to think, I'm trying to think. And then she said nothing else. No further response. Detective John said, Teresa, our bosses are out there and they're not very nice. And when you sit here and you say, I have to think about this, I have to think, you know what the conversation is, and I understand you're scared. She replied, I understand. All he said was, I have a way to get the gun. I have a way to get the gun. I can make it happen. And then he asked, and then did you say, how do you have a way? And she replied, I said, no. And I kept telling him to leave it in God's hands. If he wants us to be together, God will put us together. Just leave it alone. I just kept telling him that. I kept telling him that all the time. Just leave it alone. Let God take care of it. If He wants us to be together, we will be together. He told me. He just kept telling me that love will make you do crazy things. He said, He said to me, I will kill for you, is what he told me. Okay, Teresa, all of a sudden, here's the motive, right? The motive that she's been playing dumb with this whole time. All of a sudden, he told her in the past, before the murder, that he would kill for her. It gets better. Wait till you hear her response to being told this by the pastor. He said, I will kill for you, is what he told me. And I said, no, you won't. You will leave it alone. That was her reply. I'll kill for you. No, you won't. Leave it alone. That's it. Yeah, so next Detective John asked, did you know he was talking about Randy when he was saying this? And Teresa replied, I was hoping not. He said, well, what does your gut tell you? You're a smart woman. I totally cringed at that when he said that. What does your gut tell you? Teresa said, yes. And that's what I kept saying. Leave it alone. Let God take care of it. He replied, sure. He's going to say that a lot. Sure. And it does not sound convincing at all. Detective John next asked, how did he choose Wednesday? I have no idea. I hadn't talked to him in several days. Yeah, you do. You had the whole afternoon of alibis at the ready with receipts and everything, and whoops, you contradicted yourself again because you told Rose Warren earlier that she never talked to him after he confessed that he shot Randy in her bedroom. But here she's saying she hadn't talked to him in several days. Another lie, another contradiction. She just keeps going and going. Detective John said, what I'm getting at is, the day of the murder, Detective Rose Warren told you, we have 2 different cameras that cover the business, and you leave at 1:31. And you were very adamant about having your alibi down for where you were at when you made phone calls, and there's a reason for that. Playing dumb, Teresa replied, there was a reason for what? He said, there was a reason that you went to the certain places that you went to, that you're saving receipts. I had appointments, and Randy and I talked about them. Yeah, 'cause that's helpful considering he's dead, and you helped him get that way. She's literally using her dead husband that she killed as an alibi witness. What a dumbass. Anyway, she said, Randy's the one that scheduled my doctor's appointment for me. Again, Detective John goes, sure. I wasn't going to go because I didn't need to go. And you know what? I do believe that. She didn't go to the chiropractor because she didn't need to get anything adjusted. Randy was the one that made the appointment, right? Because she says she didn't need to go. But actually, she did need to go in order to clear out of the office for the murder to happen. He scheduled my doctor's appointment for me, and I always go to the bank at that same time, the 31st of every month, because every month has 31 days, you're dumb. I have all my receipts. I can show them to you. That's when we make our payroll every month. Detective John asked, what bank? She said, U.S. Bank. But when you look at the totality of everything, Teresa, okay, you're gone. You know, at first, you were not being honest. And she replied, I understand that. And you did the right thing. Obviously, Detective Rose Warren has a lot more information than what he's willing to share. And you look at the totality of everything. And my biggest question is, how did he pick Wednesday? But Teresa continued to deny that knowledge and said, I have no idea. Did he tell you to leave the office for a while? Nope. Because you have phone calls. There was phone contact that morning. And she said, yes, I got a message. And what did that message say? It just said, please call me. And I did not call him. I did not call him at all. I told Detective Rose Warren that I told Detective Rose Warren that I don't want to talk to him. I told him that. I texted him on my way to my appointment, probably to let him know that she was out of the office and to go for it. She continued, I texted him on my way to my appointment and told him that he has messed up my life and that I never want to see him again. Okay, that's a new lie. If she would have told him that before the murder, and if Pastor David believed her, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have murdered Randy, which is what she ultimately wanted. If he's killing Randy to be with her, and she's telling him that he's messed up her life and she never wants to see him again, what are the chances that he might pull out of doing the murder? Maybe 50-50, but I don't think he would have done it unless he was being completely 100% encouraged and backed by Teresa. Ultimately, she did want him dead, and she will admit that in open court, that she wanted him dead and gone about 2 years after this. Detective John asked, did he respond? And she said, he just kept texting me and calling me and I never responded. And what did those text messages say? Just please call me, please contact me. That was all. That was it. And he kept calling me and calling me and calling me and calling me. Detective John said, look, I'm going to drop you a little hint. Do you understand cell phone technology very much? And she said, yes. Remember, dreamers, Teresa watches enough TV, which is how she explained how she recognized that Randy had a bullet wound in his head. And that's why she slipped that up to her parents. Detective John continued, cell phone messages are not stored physically on your phone. They're stored on servers. And when we serve search warrants on servers, especially AT&T, we can see every text message with a track phone. We can see the text messages. We can get the voicemails, which we've done. Oh, yeah. So she and David thought that they were safe by sending voicemails. But I looked it up on Google and it says that voicemail messages on track phones are not encrypted, so any user data that is stored on a track phone can be accessed by law enforcement or other authorized parties. Acting totally unbothered by the fact that she just got told that they have accessed all of her text messages and voicemails with the pastor on their secret phones, she confidently responds with a mm-hmm and a yeah, so what kind of a tone. Detective John continued, so that's when he's asking for specifics, he's wanting to see if you're going to be honest. And she goes, yeah, I understand. And he continued, and there's more conversation than just, please call me, please call me. But Teresa's committed and she's going to dig in her heels when she says, I'm honest with you. I don't remember because half the time I didn't read them. I was just so mad. I just deleted them. And I'm being honest with you. I was so mad at him. I didn't want to talk to him. I wanted no conversation with him. I wanted nothing to do with him. So I just deleted them. I did not respond to them. I cannot honestly tell you what they said. I honestly cannot because I did not read them. I just wanted nothing to do with him. So I didn't respond. I didn't respond at all. Detective John continued, well, there's a slight difference in opinion, obviously, with the records that we have. And Teresa said, and there may be, because I'm telling you, honestly, I honestly don't remember all the text messages that I got from him. I know he called me several times. He called this cell phone several times, and I never answered it. Detective John said, he called that cell phone numerous times in a row. They're talking about Teresa's regular everyday cell phone, not the burner phone. And she said, I know, but I never answered it. This actually doesn't make her sound any less guilty. In fact, to me, it makes her more suspicious. Like, she's hyper aware that she cannot pick up that phone, especially not on that day. After Teresa kept denying that she answered the phone, Detective John said, but he left a message. Teresa reverted back to playing dumb and said, did he leave me a message on that phone? He did, because there's logs that show it. He calls, a voicemail is left, and that logs when you call the voicemail. Like, your phone is sitting here right now. It's hitting towers. It's reporting your location every second. trying to be nonchalant about this because you can sense that she could see where this is going. She's the one that next says, "Sure." So she's kind of mirroring the detective here. And that's a thing that the body language experts look for. The detective continued, "And that's how we knew that you had this other number. And that's how we knew everywhere you went. Rose Warren has given you every chance in the world, but it's like I said, some of this is just not adding up." Teresa leaned back in her seat. She's stretching as she says, "I'm trying to remember everything." So the detective asked, "So when was this that he told you that he had a way to get the gun?" After more stalling, Teresa said, "It's been several months ago." Again, admitting to knowing in advance that there was a plan in place to murder Randy, even before the St. Patrick's Day confrontation, as she's just admitting right here again. She continued, "It wasn't just recently, and that's honest. It just wasn't recently. It's been a few months ago. It's been a few months." Next, he asked, "How do you think he had access to it?" "I honestly do not know how he got access to it. Like I was telling Detective Rose Warren, we did give him the code to our house to get in because when we were gone, and we haven't changed it in over a year, and we go out of town a lot, so." The detective asked, "When was the last time you were out of town prior to the murder?" She replied, "Argentina. We were gone for 10 days. We left the day after Christmas, the 26th, and we were gone for 10 days. Detective John got back on topic and asked, "What we're trying to do here is make sure that what you're telling us adds up. Because like I said, they're talking to him right now. If he suddenly springs up, 'Hey, this is how I got the gun,' and you're not telling us that, we're done talking to you." Getting back to the denials, Teresa says, "I don't know how we got it. I honestly do not know." She raised her right hand and then placed it on her chest and said, "I, myself, before God, never, ever touched it. Never, ever gave it to him. Ever." And she's back to sobbing again. And then he asked her, "Did you give him the code to the safe?" "No, I don't know how he got the code to the safe. I honestly do not know. I know Randy has shown him the gun several times because he's been in our house a lot. And he's gone down there with Randy. So I don't know if he stood there and watched Randy open it. We do have it hidden in our house, and it's underneath Randy's ties. That's where it's at." Rose Warren asked, "How did he tell you he was going to get the gun? 'Cause he told you I have a way, but how did he do it?" Teresa replied, "He did not tell me. He did not tell me how he was going to get the gun." "Did you ask him?" "No, I never asked him." "Did you say, what was your response?" Teresa replied, "My response was, just like I told him, my response was, leave it alone. God will take care of it. If he wants us to be together, he will make it happen." Detective John asked, "Did it concern you that he's coming out and flat out telling you that he could take care of Randy? That he could get him out of your life? That he has a way to get the gun? He's telling you, I can get this done. I can get this taken care of." Teresa replied, "And I kept telling him all the time, leave it alone. And I understand that." And when Detective John said that, it sounded more like he wanted to tell her to shut up with that already. We don't believe you. But he held back and he continued, "But did it cause you concern that he's telling you these things?" Teresa replied, "You know why it really didn't? Because he's the pastor, and I expect the pastor to be above everybody else, not beneath everybody else." Detective John here belted out another "sure," but it was followed by a "but." "Sure, but obviously he was on board, but he wasn't above board on a lot of things that he was involved in, correct?" Shaking her head no, she goes, "Yeah." And she started to cry again, as if it's surprising to her that the pastor was a little bit on the nefarious side with everything. Detective John continued, "It just seems ironic that you leave, like I said, it was 1:31. Teresa replied, "Yes, my husband and I just got done eating lunch and I had a chiropractor appointment at 2. And I didn't set the chiropractor appointment up." Detective John again said, "Sure. Randy set it up for me. So, ugh. And I go to the bank the same day. I left at 1:30 because I had to go by the bank before I went to the chiropractor's office. After I went to the chiropractor's office, I went to the dress barn." And she yelled it for some reason. "I went to the dress barn. I mean, I just had some time to kill," poor choice of words, "before I had to pick up my daughter." Sure. When he said that last sure at that point, Teresa can tell that she isn't being believed. Nothing she's saying is being believed. And she gasped when she goes, "I'm not lying to you." And Detective John said, "We're just trying to figure out what it was, how it was that this person chose that day. Do you know why he did it this particular day?" She replied, "I don't. He asked me. I have no idea." Talking to Rose Warren, she said, "The only thing I can tell you is when I told you that I texted him and I told him he's messed up my life and I never want to talk to him again. I don't know if that set him off. He always told me that it's the warrior in him." Again, nothing to do with this nonsense. More bullshit, more just smoke and mirrors this woman keeps trying to throw up. They eventually get back to talking about the pastor admitting to her that he killed Randy the following day in her bedroom. We talked about this, but like this question detective asked, he said, "Why did he feel comfortable enough to tell you what he had done?" And Teresa said, "I don't know." Because that's a big admission. Because I think of how I'd react. And then Teresa said, "Because I told him when I saw him the next day, I told him, I said, I asked him, I said, well, I did. I asked him, I said, 'Why did you do this?' And he said, 'I was trying to protect you.' And I said, 'Protect me from what?' And he said, 'From Randy.' And then I just walked away. I got mad." Detective John then asked, "And then how did you get back together, where he tells you the details?" She said, "Well, I went into my bedroom with my son." See, she throws her son in there again because this is maybe something that he can corroborate. So she makes sure she throws her kids in when she's telling some semblance of the truth because she knows they're going to go and fact check everything. So she makes sure to let them know when her two favorite witnesses, her daughter and her son, who've stood by her through all of this, obviously, they're going to be able to corroborate what she says. So she brings them in when she knows their stories will match up. So I went into my bedroom with my son, and then he comes in and he says, "Hey, I need to talk to your mom for a minute. Would you please excuse us?" So Michael left, and I was sitting on the bench, and he knew I was mad, and I didn't say anything. He just started talking to me. Detective John said, "And he tells you all this?" "'Cause I think," and she cut him off and said, "I didn't respond to him at all." And he continued, "You look at what our normal reaction would be if this had happened to my wife and somebody tells me that, and instantly I'd be angry, and instantly I'd call the police, and I'd tell them this person just said this. What stopped you from doing that?" Teresa replied, "Because he told me." And then she turned to Rose Warren and said, "And I told you this." And that still doesn't make it any more true. The more people that you tell the lies to doesn't make it more legitimate. It just is more lies you're telling to more people. Because he told me that if I said anything, that he would go to jail. That he would go to jail, he would be put in prison, or whatever. Rose Warren said, "That's where he needs to be, don't you agree?" And very quickly she goes, "Yes, totally." Detective John said, "Teresa, that doesn't make any sense to me. This man just admitted to murdering your husband, and you're concerned about him going to prison? I don't understand it." All she had to say was, "I understand." And he continued, "We're skeptical people." She again said, "I understand." He felt comfortable enough to tell you about this. And you know what my gut's telling me? It's that you knew beforehand that this was going to happen. I did not. What I'm saying is, you didn't pull the trigger. And he kind of trailed off, and Teresa, realizing that this is not going well at all, she restarted the sobbing and the crying and the air tears and said, I didn't know anything like this was going to happen. And then he said, maybe you were taking him saying this not seriously, but my gut tells you that something caused you to leave the office, to stay gone. And then you're getting these phone calls, and you're getting these text messages, and you're getting these voicemails. It doesn't make sense. Teresa's crying, not crying. She's shaking her head no. She's dug into those denials, and she starts to yell, I was gone for reasons. I had things to do. If I didn't have my appointments, I would have left the office at 3 o'clock. I had no reason to leave early except for my appointments, and that's what I did. Sure. And we're just trying to help you, he says. Because if he says otherwise, how is that going to look to us? The only thing I can figure is that he was watching me somewhere across the street or something, and he knew when I left. Other than that, I have no idea. I have no clue because I never talked to him. I never told him my schedule. Nothing. Randy didn't talk to him. And here again, Teresa is going to place the responsibility of Pastor David knowing her business and her daily schedule on her dead husband. Because that's naturally what happens, right? Your husband is always blabbing about your schedule to your lover. Makes total sense. Anyway, Teresa said, and sometimes Randy would just talk to him and just and tell him my schedule and stuff like that. Oh, convenient, right? People don't need to know my schedule. Randy and I are the only ones who need to know my schedule. Sometimes Randy would just talk way too much, and he would tell personal things about us that people didn't need to know. But I didn't talk to him that day. I didn't tell him nothing about my schedule. No one knew our schedule that day except for me and Randy. Yeah, Teresa Stone did that. She totally just said that Randy goes around telling everybody her schedule all the time. So much so that it almost sounds like Randy was the one planning his own murder. He made her chiropractor appointment. He told David the schedule. He showed David all the guns all the time. He opened the safe in front of him. He gave him the combination. And Randy is the one who gave David the garage door code, so when they're out of town, he would be able to bring in their mail and check the house for them. Yeah, for sure, right? So it's Randy's fault he's dead. Randy is his own murder co-conspirator. Randy's fault that all of this happened, right? According to Teresa. Rose Warren said, but your actions, Teresa, let's just look at this. Let's itemize here. And I kind of just did that in my own way, but maybe he's going to do it in a better, more sophisticated police officer-y way. We've got that crime scene. The pastor told you to lie to the police. He told you what he had done. And Detective John chimed in and said, back up. At the crime scene, you got rid of the phone. And Rose Warren continued. And he tells you, basically, admits to you what he did during the time before the funeral. These are all actions of somebody who is trying to protect their own rear end. What we're saying is this is not somebody who wants to help a killer. This is somebody who says, oh crap, I can't believe you did that, and you've got me involved in it, and I should have went to the police from the very beginning, but now we've got to circle the wagons and hope this just goes away. Your actions speak louder than your words today. Your actions tells us that this is somebody who's afraid they're going to get in trouble, because you will gladly throw him under the bus. He's murdered your husband, all right? And when he tells you that, as a grieving wife, you would be more than happy to throw him under the bus, but because you don't throw him under the bus, because you've attempted to protect him, it tells us that you're trying to protect yourself as well. There's two people trying to protect themselves, David and yourself. Teresa tries to muster up a denial, but she really can't deny reality as she shakes her head no and stammers, I don't have. And then her entire upper body frame just slumps in exasperation at the fact that these officers are not believing her tall tales. Detective John said, Teresa, we've worked other cases, and she yelled, I know that. And he continued, similar to this, where somebody made an admission to the victim's spouse. And you know what they did? They immediately came down to the police station. They're blowing up Detective Rose Warren's phone and saying, this person just told me, and they were disgusted. Through more fake sobbing, Teresa says, I know. I should have come to you sooner. And you didn't do that. And then you came in here today, and you're dishonest about your actions. Detective Rose Warren has had to pull it out of you. Desperate to find a direction to go, Teresa decides that the old standby will work for now, fear. She says to him, do you understand that I am scared? Scared of what? He asked. I'm scared. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know what he's capable of anymore. Sob, sob, sob. Fake, fake, fake. Cry, cry, cry. Lie, lie, lie. Rose Warren replies, he's not going to hurt you. He's not going to hurt you, Teresa. And then she says, I told you. He always told me. He told me. And then she stopped. And then she's really got nothing else to say after that. Rose Warren asked, are you scared of him, or are you scared of the law? Are you scared of what the law might do to you if you told us the truth? But Teresa here, she's standing her ground, and she says, I've told you everything. I have told you everything. And she's just frustrated. Detective John said, Teresa, we're trying to lay this out gently, and I'm going to be very blunt with you. Your actions are not that of a victim's spouse. Help us understand this. Your actions are screaming, I'm covering up what this pastor's done. I've covered up everything we've been involved in. I've covered up these phones. You know, first you're not honest about when you had the track phone, and then you realize, guess what? They knew I had the phone. Once you realize we have the evidence, you're like, I'll go ahead and be honest about this. Everything has had to be pulled out of you. I know there's more to this. Detective Rose Warren knows that there's more to this. If you want us to help you, you've got to tell us now. We cannot sit here all night and do this. Rose Warren spoke up and said, I told you how I feel. I don't know why. I like you as a person, and I'm being completely honest with you. I don't want to see somebody else get treated better than you because they just happen. And before he could finish, Detective John said, Teresa, Rose Warren's held us all back. 25 people that have been working on this nonstop, and he's the one that's going to bat for you when we're sitting in the meetings with the prosecutor and we're sitting in the meetings with all the other investigators. This man's trying to help you. He is your only lifeline right now, but you got to start being honest. Teresa stuck to her guns again and said, I'm being honest with you. I don't know what else. But he cut her off and said, the biggest thing I want to know is when David got the gun. But Teresa stuck to her story through and through, and she said, I don't know. I'm telling you, I don't know when he got the gun. I have no idea. Why don't you ask him? He continued, but it's really strange for us that Randy has this gun. He carries it all the time, and then suddenly it's gone, and then he's murdered with it. But Teresa insisted, I haven't seen that gun in a really long time. And then she tosses up her hands, and she just is gesturing either, I don't know, or I'm just frustrated with this line of questioning. I haven't seen him carrying it in a very long time. He stopped carrying it in his briefcase, that's all I know. Detective John asked, how long ago? She replied, well, what I was telling Detective Rose Warren, the last time I saw it was in October of last year when he purchased that little handgun. And that's not true because she said she saw it at Christmas time when her son was home and they were cleaning it. But it's really hard to keep your lies straight, so we'll give her a little bit of slack, okay? That's the last time I saw it. I don't know what else to say. And aside from this being a contradiction to her story that she saw the gun at Christmas time, she also described the last time she saw the missing Glock as being a long time ago and a very long time ago. But it's only been maybe 4 months since Christmas. Yeah, it's been 4 months since Christmas. No, 3 months. But October would be 5 months. She's saying, I haven't seen it since October. That was a very long time ago. But 5 months is the newest story. 5 months is not a very long time to see one gun in a collection. Hardly, I would say. A very long time ago would be at least like a year or two. But 5 months is not a very long time to not see a gun. 5 months might be a long time to not smoke a cigarette, but not to see a gun that you claim to not to want to have anything to do with. In fact, seeing it in October is kind of recent for somebody that has no interest in being around guns. And I'll just leave it at that for today. I'll go ahead and pick this back up in the next episode. From what I'm seeing, what I have left in my notes, I think I've got about 2 more episodes to discuss this interrogation, and we will finally be done with this for good. I'm going to go ahead and get this published and move on to recording the next one. I'm driving to California on Wednesday for Thanksgiving, so I am trying really hard to get this done for you before I go. All right, hang tight for the next installment of California Dreaming. I want to thank you all for listening, and as always, sweet dreams.